We know from official sources that the greatest villain in human history, Adolf Hitler, shot himself in his bunker on April 30, 1945, and his wife Eva Braun took potassium cyanide. But it seems we have been duped. Foreign journalists found out that on April 28, 1945, Hitler was still able to escape from the embattled Berlin. Few people know that the leader of the USSR, Joseph Stalin, did not believe Hitler's death until the end of his life. Despite the fact that the so-called remains of the Führer were in the USSR, Stalin was always skeptical of his death. No evidence could convince him of this. According to his psychoprofile, Hitler was neither a suicidal type, nor a hysteric, nor a psychopath. He was a cold and calculating man. Stalin was obsessed with the possibility that Hitler could have escaped, and not without the help of the Allies. But why did the leader of all nations suddenly come to such a conclusion? It is worth paying special attention to the fact that after the surrender of Germany, captured Nazi commanders at the interrogation reported that they, even after April 22, stopped receiving orders from Hitler from his headquarters. Captured officers from Hitler's staff and inner circle said that they were surprised by the changes that occurred to the Führer after the bombing of Berlin began. The Führer changed in face and in behavior, almost did not leave his office. But it did not occur to any of them that in front of them was already another person, a double of Adolf Hitler, who after the assassination attempt on that Volchance, began to periodically replace the Führer. Historians claim that it was his corpse that was found and mistaken for Hitler's corpse. But about everything in order. British historians Simon Dunstan and Gerard Williams conducted an independent investigation. 5 years they traveled around the world and in bits and pieces pored over mountains of evidence, documents, interviewed eyewitnesses, and finally convinced themselves of the terrible fact, far beyond the official history. In 1945, one of the greatest villains of the era was able to hide in Argentina. Organized the escape of the century. Martin Bormann, historians say. Bormann was the most cunning and mysterious man in the leadership of Nazi Germany. He was the head of the party chancellery and Hitler's personal secretary. By 1943, when Bormann realized the war was lost, he began planning Operation Eagle Flight to move looted gold, gems and other valuables to safe havens around the world. Bormann's second operation, codenamed Tierra del Fuego, was intended to provide a safe haven for Hitler and his inner circle, so that there would be a place from which to lead the revival of Germany and Nazism after the war. Bormann's choice fell on Patagonia, a vast and almost deserted area in southern Argentina. Here have long been settled by Germans. In fact, it was a German colony in Latin America. In addition, in 1943 in Argentina there was a coup, as a result of which came to power Juan Domingo Perón, who sympathized with the Nazis. To this country and sent Bormann looted gold stream. $50 billion worth of gold alone at today's prices, Dunstan and Williams claim. Helping Martin was SS Gruppenführer Heinrich Müller, chief of the Gestapo of the Third Reich. And another assistant was SS Gruppenführer Hermann Fegelein, an old friend of Bormann's and husband of Eva Braun's sister. At midnight on April 28, 1945, Operation Tierra del Fuego entered the decisive phase of Hitler and Eva Braun, Gorman, Fegelein and 6 loyal SS men changed into hooded cloaks and quietly snuck out of the famous Führer's bunker through a secret passage into the subway tunnels. The 7-kilometer journey underground took 3 hours. Once outside the main exit of Furby-Liner Platz station, the fugitives saw 3 Tiger II tanks and 2 half-tracked armored personnel carriers, Sonderkraftfahrt Soak 251, waiting to take them to the temporary airstrip at Hohenzollern Dam, a kilometer away. But without Bormann. The head of Operation Tierra del Fuego had unfinished business and on the runway of the Hitlerites was waiting for the plane U-52, which was controlled by SS Hauptsturmführer Peter Baumgard. The U-52 delivered the fugitives to the airfield of the Danish town of Tunner. It is worth noting that in 1947 Baumgard testified at the trial in Poland and admitted that he personally took Adolf Hitler and Eva Braun out of Germany on the eve of their supposed suicide. No one in the courtroom took the German pilot's statement seriously. Surprisingly, noted British journalists, but no one even tried to trace the fate of Peter Baumgard himself. And after his release in 1951 from Mokotowski prison near Warsaw, he simply disappeared from view. From Tunner already on another Junkers group flew to the German Luftwaffe base Travemünde, from there on the third plane to the Spanish Air Force base in the town of Rios, 110 kilometers from Barcelona. That plane the Spaniards would later dismantle to cover their tracks and not to give the Western Allies an excuse to accuse the dictator Franco of facilitating Hitler's escape. From Rios, the Spanish Air Force plane took the fugitives to the top-secret Nazi facility Casa Winter, which was located on one of the islands of the Canary Archipelago. Meanwhile, in Berlin, Bormann and Müller were covering their tracks. In the underground Führer bunker settled doppelgangers of the leader and his mistress. The Gestapo Secret Service found a double of Adolf Hitler in 1941. It turned out to be a certain Gustav Weber, who worked in the printing house of the Polish city of Breslau, a native of Austria, a very distant relative of Hitler, who did not know about his kinship with the Führer. One day Gustav Weber disappeared and became the only student of the secret university. In complete secrecy, the double took special courses, studying only one subject: the life and habits of Adolf Hitler. Weber was weaned from smoking, forced to lose extra pounds, taught gait, display of emotions inherent in Hitler in public appearances, the habits of the Führer in everyday life, all the details of his behavior. The only detail that could give away the substitution was Weber's hand. At times she was seized by an attack of uncontrollable trembling. None of the Führer's inner circle, except Bormann and Müller, knew of the existence of the double. The name of Eva Braun's understudy is unknown. She was seen in the corps of young actresses whom Goebbels kept for his own pleasure. Eva and the actress were very similar, plus worked makeup artists and hairdressers. Toward the end of the war, Weber began to fill in for Hitler with increasing frequency. Back in the bunker, the cunning Bormann organized the famous marriage of doppelgangers. When he received a report that the head of the Nazis in a safe place, Weber was shot at point-blank range, understudy Eva and sheepdog Blondie poisoned. The corpses were brought to the surface and buried. Soon they would be found by Soviet soldiers. But we come back to Hitler. The top-secret Casa Winter base was located on a deserted island. Bormann created the one-time facility in 1943, specifically as a major transportation hub for the escape of the Führer and his inner circle. Here the Hitler couple and the sheepdog boarded the U-518 submarine. They had a long journey of 8,500 kilometers to Latin America. On the night of July 28, 1945, the submarine reached Argentina. The fugitives spent the night at the Miramar Villa, and the next morning they flew to the San Ramon Ranch in an Argentine Air Force biplane. The Germans at that time had complete control over all approaches to the town of San Carlos de Bariloche, near where the ranch was located. No one could enter or leave the area without official permission from the local Nazi leaders. Hitler and Eva lived here for 8 months. In March 1946, the ranch workers were told that the guests had tragically died in a car accident. Their corpses, they said, burned beyond recognition. In fact, the couple was transported to an even more secure refuge, the mansion in Alco. This secluded mansion is located at the foot of the Andes, on the remote shore of a lake on Velvopi. In the surrounding wooded hills, Nazi observation posts controlled all approaches from land, water, and air. Until October 1955, Rancho in Alco was Hitler's main residence. In 1948, Bormann and Müller showed up in Argentina, completing all the secret business in Europe. Hitler's wife Eva was very sad in this seclusion. She was a cheerful and frivolous woman who loved noisy company. This lifestyle was not for her, and her beloved Adolf, who once looked so bright surrounded by his servile associates, was now constantly ill. His former greatness faded in the solitude of rural life and the care of 2 small children. Yes, English journalists claim that the Führer had procreated, so for Eva, who felt her youth slipping away, her husband was probably bad company. In 1954 she finally left her spouse, moving her children from Analco to the town of Neuquén. After Bormann's military organization, consisting of former SS men, constantly looked after her. After the coup in Argentina in 1955, when Juan Perón fled the country, Bormann moved Hitler to the small estate of La Clara in a remote corner of Patagonia, leaving him his personal physician Otto Lehmann and servant former non-commissioned officer Heinrich Beeth. On February 12, 1962, Hitler suffered a stroke, paralyzing the left side of his body. He soon fell into a coma. On February 13, 1962, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Dr. Lemon stated that there were no signs of life in the patient. The former dictator was a little short of his 73rd birthday. As for Bormann and Müller, it is known that in 1980 they were still living in Argentina. When and where they died, data is nowhere to be found. Both Nazis knew how to cleverly cover their tracks. Nothing is known about Eva Braun and her daughters. It is unlikely that Eva is still alive, she would now be more than 100 years old, and the Führer's heirs may still be living in Argentina or somewhere else.